The truth set free. The dimly lit courtroom buzzed with tension, every creak of a bench and murmur of voices amplifying the palpable unease. 10-year-old Emma Brooks stood at the witness stand, her small frame dwarfed by the imposing wooden structure. She clutched her worn stuffed bear tightly, its once bright fur now dulled by years of comfort-giving hugs. Her large brown eyes shimmered with tears, but her voice remained steady as she whispered words that rippled through the courtroom like a thunderclap. "My mom. She's lying. She's not who you think she is." The room erupted into gasps and whispers. Lydia Brooks, the seemingly perfect mother, sat frozen at the defense table. Her piercing green eyes bore into Emma, her expression a mix of shock and fury. She had always prided herself on her unassailable reputation, a loving parent, community leader, and volunteer. But now, that carefully constructed image was crumbling before everyone. The judge tapped his gavel sharply. "Order. Order in the court." The murmurs subsided, leaving only the sound of Emma's uneven breathing. The events leading to this moment began 6 months earlier in the quaint town of Maplewood, where Emma and Lydia lived in a cozy suburban house. To outsiders, they seemed like the perfect family. Emma with her radiant smile and curly blonde hair, and Lydia, the ever-involved community figure. She organized fundraisers, baked cookies for neighbors, and volunteered tirelessly. But behind closed doors, their life was anything but idyllic. Lydia was demanding and volatile, her anger flaring at the slightest provocation. Emma had learned to tread carefully, hiding bruises, both physical and emotional, from the world. One spilled glass of milk or a less-than-perfect homework assignment could send Lydia into a rage. Yet, Emma remained silent, convincing herself that this was normal, that love sometimes came with conditions. A beacon of hope. One day, Emma's life took a small but significant turn. A new music teacher, Mr. Carter, arrived at Maplewood Elementary. He was kind and encouraging, with an easy smile that made every student feel valued. When Emma sang during class, Mr. Carter told her she had a voice that could light up a room. "No one's ever said that to me before," Emma admitted shyly. "You have a gift, Emma," he said warmly. "You should join the choir. I think it would make you happy." Emma hesitated. Asking her mother for permission felt impossible, but the thought of being part of something positive lingered in her mind. One afternoon, when Lydia was away at a meeting, Emma decided to attend choir practice in secret. Singing with the other children filled her with a joy she hadn't felt in years. But when she returned home, Lydia was waiting. Her mother's fury was volcanic. "You went behind my back," Lydia hissed, her face contorted with rage. "How dare you disobey me?" That night, as Emma lay in bed clutching her stuffed bear, she whispered, "Why can't she just love me the way I am?" The discovery. A week later, while helping clean the attic, Emma stumbled upon a dusty box of old photographs and documents. Curiosity piqued. She opened it. What she found inside sent her heart racing. Legal papers, financial records, and letters that painted a drastically different picture of Lydia. There were records of financial discrepancies from charities Lydia had managed and signatures that appeared forged. But what struck Emma the most was a birth certificate listing her as Emma Carter, with no mention of Lydia Brooks. Emma felt her world shift. Could her mother, her only family, be lying about who she truly was? For days, Emma wrestled with the weight of the discovery. She wanted to confront Lydia, but fear kept her silent. Instead, she confided in Mr. Carter after school one day. "Mr. Carter," she began hesitantly, "what if someone finds out their whole life is a lie? What should they do?" Mr. Carter looked at her thoughtfully. "The truth can be scary, Emma," he said gently, "but it's also powerful. It has a way of setting us free." The courtroom. When the trial against Lydia began, it was under the pretense of financial fraud, charges of embezzling money from a local charity. Lydia had vehemently denied the accusations, painting herself as a victim of jealousy and betrayal. Emma, caught in the crossfire, watched as her mother's charisma swayed the court. But the weight of the truth became too much for Emma to bear. That morning, she had packed the box of documents and made the decision to tell the court everything. She revealed her discovery, her voice trembling but resolute. "My mom. She's not my real mom," Emma said, her words hanging in the air like a storm cloud. Gasps rippled through the courtroom as Lydia's carefully constructed mask began to slip. The judge ordered the box to be opened. Inside were the incriminating documents Emma had found. Among them was the birth certificate, its faded ink a stark testament to Lydia's deception. The unraveling. The judge's stern voice cut through the murmurs. "Mrs. Brooks, you have some explaining to do." Lydia's composure faltered. "This is absurd," she snapped. "She's just a child. She doesn't understand what she's found." But the evidence spoke for itself. The prosecutor presented the documents, detailing Lydia's financial misconduct and the truth about Emma's guardianship. As the courtroom digested the revelations, Emma felt both a crushing sadness and a strange sense of relief. The judge turned to Lydia. "Mrs. Brooks, these allegations are serious. We will need to investigate further. In the meantime, Emma will remain in temporary care." As Lydia was escorted out of the courtroom, her sharp green eyes met Emma's one last time. For a moment, Emma thought she saw something other than anger, perhaps regret or fear, but it was gone in an instant. A new beginning. In the days that followed, Emma was placed with a foster family. To her surprise, she discovered that Mr. Carter was her biological uncle. The revelation brought a bittersweet sense of closure, as well as the promise of a brighter future. Through the storm of her mother's lies, Emma had found something she never expected: the courage to stand up for herself. She learned that the truth, no matter how painful, could lead to healing. And as she joined the school choir and sang her heart out, Emma felt a lightness she hadn't known before, a hope that she could finally be free to be herself. This story teaches us that even in the darkest moments, the truth has the power to illuminate a path forward. Emma's bravery reminds us that facing fear can lead to unexpected strength, and that love and kindness, no matter how small, can change a life forever. The echoes of truth. The courtroom remained a whirlwind of murmurs as Lydia Brooks was escorted out, her fiery green eyes casting one last glance at Emma. For Emma, the realization of her own courage hadn't fully sunk in. Her tiny hands trembled in her lap as the judge dismissed the court for the day. Mrs. Jensen, her temporary guardian, placed a comforting arm around Emma's shoulder and gently guided her out of the courtroom. Outside, the sky was a muted gray, reflecting Emma's swirling emotions. Reporters lingered by the courthouse steps, their cameras snapping furiously as questions were hurled toward Emma. "How does it feel to reveal such a shocking truth?" one shouted. "Do you regret exposing your mother?" asked another. Emma shrank back, overwhelmed, but Mrs. Jensen stepped in. "That's enough," she said firmly, shielding Emma. "She's just a child. Leave her be." They hurried away, Emma clutching her stuffed bear like a lifeline. When they reached Mrs. Jensen's car, Emma climbed into the back seat, staring silently out the window. Her mind raced with what-ifs and fragments of the courtroom chaos. For years, she had yearned for love and approval from Lydia, only to discover that her very existence was rooted in a lie. The birth certificate with Emma Carter felt like both a key to the truth and a betrayal of everything she thought she knew. The first glimmer of freedom. Mrs. Jensen drove in silence, sensing Emma's need for space. When they reached her cozy home, Emma was greeted by the smell of warm chocolate chip cookies and the sight of Katie waiting on the porch. Katie ran to her, pulling her into a tight hug. "I saw the news," Katie whispered. "You're so brave, Emma." Emma's lip quivered, but she managed a small smile. For the first time in months, she felt a flicker of warmth in her chest. Someone believed in her. That night, as she lay in the soft bed Mrs. Jensen had prepared, Emma allowed herself to dream for the first time in a long time. She imagined a life where she could sing freely, where she wasn't afraid of making mistakes, and where love wasn't a weapon but a gift. The investigation unfolds. Over the next few weeks, the town of Maplewood buzzed with revelations about Lydia Brooks. The documents Emma had found were not only irrefutable proof of financial fraud, but also hinted at a darker, more personal betrayal. The police uncovered evidence suggesting that Lydia had orchestrated the adoption under questionable circumstances. Emma's birth parents, it seemed, had been loving individuals who had fallen victim to Lydia's manipulations. Mr. Carter, who had always been drawn to Emma's voice and spirit, was stunned when he discovered the connection. He had lost contact with his brother, Emma's father, years ago and had never known about Emma's existence. When he approached Mrs. Jensen about meeting Emma, it was with trepidation. "I don't want to overwhelm her," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "But if she's willing, I'd like to tell her about her father." Mrs. Jensen hesitated but ultimately agreed to arrange a meeting. "Emma's stronger than she knows," she told him. "She'll be ready when the time is right." A new chapter begins. The day Emma met Mr. Carter outside of school, she was nervous but curious. They sat on a bench under the sprawling oak tree in the playground. Mr. Carter, usually so confident in front of a classroom, seemed unsure of where to begin. "Emma," he started, his voice soft, "I didn't know until recently that you're my niece. Your father, my brother, was a good man. He would have loved you so much." Emma blinked, her chest tightening. Why didn't he keep me? Why did I end up with her? Mr. Carter sighed. "It's complicated. Your parents trusted Lydia to help them when they were in a tough situation. They didn't know what she was really like. By the time they realized, it was too late." Emma stared at the ground, processing his words. It was a lot to take in, but for the first time, she felt like a piece of the puzzle was falling into place. "What was he like?" she asked quietly. A smile broke across Mr. Carter's face. "He was kind, like you. Always humming a tune or strumming a guitar. You remind me of him in so many ways." The thought warmed Emma's heart. She hadn't lost everything. Her father's legacy lived on in her. Finding her voice. As the trial against Lydia unfolded, Emma began to rebuild her life. She joined the school choir officially, pouring her emotions into every note she sang. Music became her sanctuary, a way to process her pain and express her dreams. With Mr. Carter's encouragement, she auditioned for a solo in the upcoming school concert. When the day of the performance arrived, Emma stood backstage, her heart pounding. She clutched her stuffed bear, now worn but still comforting, and took a deep breath. The curtains opened, and the spotlight found her. Emma began to sing. Her voice, clear and steady, filled the auditorium, silencing the crowd. Each word carried the weight of her journey, her struggles, her resilience, and her newfound hope. By the time she finished, the audience erupted in applause, but Emma didn't need their validation. For the first time, she felt proud of herself, healing and moving forward. Months later, the court ruled that Lydia would face significant prison time for her crimes. Emma's guardianship was officially transferred to Mrs. Jensen, with Mr. Carter becoming a constant presence in her life. Together, they began to explore her past, piecing together the fragments of her family history. Through it all, Emma learned that family wasn't just about blood. It was about love, support, and the people who showed up when it mattered most. Lydia had tried to control her with lies, but the truth had set Emma free. One evening, as she sat on the porch with Mr. Carter, she asked, "Do you think Dad would be proud of me?" Mr. Carter smiled, his eyes shining. "He'd be more than proud, Emma. He'd be amazed by you." Emma looked out at the setting sun, its golden light bathing the world in warmth. For the first time, the future didn't feel so scary. She had found her voice, her courage, and a family who truly cared for her. And she knew, deep down, that she would never let fear silence her again. This continuation deepens Emma's journey of self-discovery, resilience, and healing, offering an inspiring message about the power of truth, love, and finding one's voice amidst adversity. The road to forgiveness. The days turned into weeks, and life in Maplewood slowly returned to normal, at least for the townspeople. For Emma, normal was an unfamiliar concept. The courtroom drama, the unraveling of her mother's lies, and the revelations about her past had left scars deeper than she realized. While she was now in the safe embrace of Mrs. Jensen and growing closer to Mr. Carter, Emma often found herself caught in an emotional storm. The shadows of the past. One rainy afternoon, Emma sat in her new bedroom, flipping through a scrapbook she'd started. It was filled with photographs Mrs. Jensen had taken of her recent milestones, her first choir performance, a trip to the zoo with Katie, and her first A+ on a math test since moving in. The pictures showed a smiling girl, but Emma couldn't shake the lingering guilt and confusion about Lydia. She knew what Lydia had done was wrong, unforgivable, even. But there were moments, fleeting but vivid, where Emma missed her. Despite all the pain Lydia had caused, she was still the woman who had sung lullabies when Emma was a toddler, bandaged scraped knees, and made pancakes on Saturday mornings, when her mood allowed it. "Why does it hurt to miss someone who hurt me?" Emma asked Mrs. Jensen one evening as they washed dishes together. Mrs. Jensen paused, setting down the plate she was scrubbing. "Because love is complicated, Emma," she said gently. "You loved your mother, even if she didn't always show love the right way. It's okay to feel that way. What's important is understanding what you deserve, and you deserve kindness and respect." Reconnecting with herself. Mrs. Jensen had a knack for knowing when Emma needed space and when she needed a push. One weekend, she signed Emma up for a local painting class, something Emma had mentioned enjoying years ago. At first, Emma hesitated. "I'm not good at art," she protested. "You don't have to be good," Mrs. Jensen replied with a smile. "Just enjoy it." The first class was awkward. Emma felt out of place among the other kids, most of whom seemed to know exactly what they were doing. But as the weeks passed, she began to lose herself in the colors and brushstrokes. Painting became an outlet, a way to process her emotions without words. One day, while cleaning up after class, the instructor, Mrs. Leela, approached Emma. "You have a unique way of expressing yourself through your art," she said. Emma frowned. "I just paint what I feel. And that's exactly why it's so powerful," Mrs. Leela said. "Keep going, Emma. The world needs more people who can turn their feelings into beauty." A letter from Lydia. One evening, after returning from choir practice, Emma found Mrs. Jensen waiting for her at the kitchen table, a thick envelope in her hand. "This came for you today," Mrs. Jensen said, her expression unreadable. Emma's heart sank when she saw the return address, the state penitentiary where Lydia was being held. Her hands trembled as she opened the letter. Inside was a handwritten note from Lydia. ***, Dear Emma, I don't know how to begin this letter. I've replayed everything that happened in my mind over and over, and I keep coming back to one thing. I failed you. I failed you as a mother, as a protector, and as someone you should have been able to trust. What I did was wrong. There's no excuse for the way I treated you or the lies I told. I know you might hate me, and I wouldn't blame you if you did. But I need you to know that, in my own broken way, I loved you. I want you to be happy, Emma. Truly happy. Don't let my mistakes hold you back. You deserve a life full of joy, and I hope one day you can forgive me, not for me, but for yourself. With love, Mom." Emma read the letter 3 times, her emotions swirling in a tempest. She felt anger, sadness, and a sliver of something she couldn't quite name. Was it forgiveness? "Are you okay?" Mrs. Jensen asked softly. Emma nodded slowly. "I think so. I don't know what to feel." Mrs. Jensen placed a hand on Emma's. "Take your time. Forgiveness isn't about letting someone off the hook. It's about freeing yourself from the pain they caused. The choir competition. As the months passed, Emma poured her energy into choir. The regional competition was fast approaching, and the team had been working tirelessly. Emma had been chosen for a solo, a fact that filled her with both pride and nerves. The day of the competition arrived, and Emma stood backstage, her heart pounding. As the curtains parted and the audience's applause filled the air, Emma stepped forward. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and began to sing. The song was one Mr. Carter had suggested, a piece about overcoming fear and finding strength in vulnerability. As Emma's voice soared, she felt every word resonate in her chest. She wasn't just singing for the judges or the audience. She was singing for herself. When the final note faded, the auditorium erupted into applause. Emma opened her eyes to see the crowd on their feet. Among them, she spotted Mr. Carter and Mrs. Jensen, their faces beaming with pride. The gift of healing. After the competition, Emma received an unexpected surprise. Mr. Carter presented her with an old acoustic guitar that had belonged to her father. "He loved playing this," Mr. Carter said. "I think he'd want you to have it." Emma ran her fingers over the worn wood, feeling a connection to her father she'd never had before. She spent hours teaching herself to play, using the guitar as another way to express the emotion she couldn't put into words. A future full of possibility. By the time Emma's 12th birthday rolled around, she was a different person. She had learned to navigate the complex emotions tied to her past, and while the scars Lydia left remained, they no longer defined her. At her birthday party, surrounded by friends and family, Emma stood to make a toast. "Thank you for being here," she said, her voice steady and confident. "I used to think strength meant hiding how you feel, but I've learned that real strength is letting people in and asking for help. I couldn't have made it without all of you." As the party continued, Emma caught a glimpse of her reflection in the window. For the first time, she saw someone who was no longer defined by her pain, but by her resilience, her creativity, and her capacity to love. The road ahead wouldn't be perfect. Emma knew that. But it was hers to walk, and she was ready for whatever came next. This continuation highlights Emma's journey of healing, forgiveness, and rediscovery, showing how love, art, and community can transform even the deepest wounds into something beautiful, building a new foundation. As Emma stepped into her teenage years, life felt like a new canvas, her experiences the vibrant strokes of color that shaped who she was becoming. The years that followed the courtroom's revelation brought new joys and challenges, but through it all, Emma clung to the lessons she had learned: truth, resilience, and the power of connection. Discovering her passion, Emma's connection to music deepened as she grew older. With the guitar her uncle had given her, she began writing her own songs, pouring her thoughts into melodies and lyrics that spoke to her journey. At first, the songs were private, scrawled into a notebook she kept tucked away. But one evening, as Mrs. Jensen prepared dinner, Emma sat on the porch, strumming the guitar, and began to sing softly. Mrs. Jensen paused at the window, her hand still, as Emma's voice drifted into the house. The song was raw and tender, telling the story of a girl who had learned to find her voice in a world that often tried to silence her. When Emma finished, Mrs. Jensen stepped outside, her eyes glistening. "Emma, that was beautiful. You have a gift," she said. Emma blushed, setting the guitar down. "It's just something I wrote. It's not that good. It's more than good. You have a way of touching hearts with your words. Don't hide it." Encouraged by Mrs. Jensen, Emma began performing her songs at local events. Her music resonated with people of all ages, and soon she became a beloved figure in the Maplewood community. With every performance, she felt more confident, her music becoming a testament to the resilience she had cultivated. The shadows resurface. Despite her growing success, Emma wasn't immune to the echoes of her past. One afternoon, while scrolling through her phone, she stumbled upon a news article about Lydia's parole hearing. The headline read, "Lydia Brooks seeks early release, claims rehabilitation and remorse." Emma's stomach churned. She hadn't seen or heard from Lydia since receiving the letter years ago. The thought of facing her mother again stirred a mix of emotions: anger, fear, and a faint, reluctant hope. "Do you want to talk about it?" Mr. Carter asked when he noticed her troubled expression. Emma hesitated. "I don't know what I want. Part of me wants to yell at her, tell her how much she hurt me. But another part just wants to understand why." Mr. Carter nodded. "Healing isn't a straight line, Emma. It's okay to feel conflicted. Whatever you decide, know that you don't have to face it alone." A difficult decision. A few weeks later, Emma received a letter from Lydia, written with the same meticulous handwriting as before. It was brief and to the point. Lydia was asking to see her. Emma wrestled with the decision for days. She confided in Mrs. Jensen, Mr. Carter, and even Katie, who remained her steadfast best friend. Each offered support but left the decision in her hands. Finally, Emma made up her mind. "I need to see her," she said one evening. "Not because I forgive her completely, but because I need answers for myself." The meeting. The day of the meeting was gray and overcast, mirroring Emma's apprehension. She walked into the sterile visitation room, her heart pounding. Lydia sat at a metal table, looking older and wearier than Emma remembered. Her once sharp green eyes now held a softness Emma hadn't seen before. "Emma," Lydia said, her voice breaking as she stood. Emma sat down across from her, keeping her expression guarded. "I'm here to hear what you have to say. That's all." Lydia nodded, sitting back down. "I don't deserve your forgiveness," she began, "but I need you to know that I spent every day regretting what I did to you. I was broken in ways I didn't even understand, and I took it out on you. That wasn't your fault. None of it was." Emma's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't let them fall. "Why did you lie? About everything? About me?" Lydia looked down at her hands. "Because I was scared. When I took you in, I thought I could give you a better life. But instead, I let my own pain and selfishness poison everything. I didn't know how to be the mother you deserved." The conversation lasted an hour, filled with admissions, apologies, and moments of painful silence. When it was over, Emma walked out feeling lighter, though not entirely healed. Forgiveness was still a journey, but she had taken the first step. Embracing the future. As the years passed, Emma flourished. Her music gained recognition beyond Maplewood, leading to performances at regional festivals and even a recording opportunity. But her heart remained in her hometown, where her journey had begun. Emma also became an advocate for children in foster care, using her story to inspire others. She spoke at schools, community centers, and conferences, sharing her experiences with unflinching honesty and offering hope to those who felt voiceless. One day, after a particularly moving performance, a young girl approached Emma. "Your story sounds like mine," the girl said quietly. Emma knelt down to her level, her heart aching with familiarity. "You're not alone," she said, handing the girl a small notebook. "Write your story. Sing your song. The world needs to hear it." The legacy of resilience. By the time Emma turned 18, she had built a life filled with love, purpose, and creativity. Lydia's mistakes no longer defined her. They were simply a part of her story, a chapter in a book that was still being written. On the anniversary of her first solo performance, Emma held a concert in Maplewood to raise funds for a new music program at her old school. As she sang the final song, one she had written about her journey, she looked out at the crowd. Among the faces were Mrs. Jensen, Mr. Carter, Katie, and countless others who had supported her along the way. For a moment, Emma felt the weight of everything she had overcome. She was no longer the scared little girl hiding her bruises or the hesitant teenager unsure of her worth. She was Emma Brooks, an artist, an advocate, and a survivor. As the audience erupted into applause, Emma smiled. This was her life, her story, and she had found the strength to write every word of it herself. This part emphasizes Emma's ongoing journey toward healing, her bravery in facing the unresolved parts of her past, and her determination to turn her pain into purpose. A life rewritten. By her mid-20s, Emma Brooks was more than a survivor. She had become a beacon of hope for others. Her music career had blossomed, her advocacy work had touched countless lives, and her story had become a source of inspiration. Yet, as Emma often reminded herself, growth was not a destination but an ongoing journey. The road to recognition. Emma's music had taken her to places she once only dreamed of. She performed on stages large and small, her songs reaching audiences far beyond Maplewood. Each lyric she wrote carried the weight of her experiences and the resilience she had cultivated. But even as her fame grew, Emma stayed grounded, often returning to her hometown to host workshops for at-risk youth. One day, after a particularly moving performance at a benefit concert, a representative from a national foster care organization approached her. "Emma, your story is incredible," the woman said. "We'd love for you to partner with us as an ambassador." Emma hesitated, feeling the familiar tug of imposter syndrome. "I'm just a girl from Maplewood," she replied. "Exactly," the woman said with a smile. "And that's why your voice matters. You show people that it's possible to rise above even the darkest circumstances." The opportunity felt daunting, but Emma accepted. She began traveling the country, speaking at conferences and performing at fundraisers. Her platform allowed her to advocate for systemic changes in the foster care system, ensuring that every child felt seen, heard, and supported. Confronting old wounds. Despite her successes, Emma occasionally found herself grappling with the lingering effects of her past. One rainy evening, as she prepared for a speech in a city far from home, she received a call from the warden of the facility where Lydia was still incarcerated. "Ms. Brooks," the warden began, "your mother has requested to see you. She's not in good health, and she believes it may be her last chance to speak with you." Emma's breath caught. She hadn't seen Lydia since their last meeting years ago, and while she had found some semblance of closure, the idea of seeing her again reopened old wounds. I don't know," Emma said, her voice trembling. "You don't have to decide now," the warden replied. "Take your time." For days, Emma wrestled with the decision. She turned to Mr. Carter, now a constant in her life, for guidance. "You've always faced the hard things head-on," he reminded her. "You don't owe her anything, Emma. But if you feel it's something you need to do for yourself, I know you'll handle it with the grace you always do." The final visit. 2 weeks later, Emma found herself walking down the sterile hallway of the prison, her heart pounding in her chest. Lydia sat waiting in the same metal chair as before, her once commanding presence diminished by age and illness. Her green eyes, now clouded, softened when she saw Emma. "Emma," Lydia said, her voice raspier, but still familiar. Emma sat down, her hands folded tightly in her lap. "I'm here because I need to let go of the past," she began. "I've carried the weight of what you did for too long." Tears streamed down Lydia's face as she nodded. "I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm so proud of who you've become. I hope you know that." Emma took a deep breath, the word she had rehearsed swirling in her mind. "I can't forget what you did, and I may never fully understand it. But I've learned that forgiveness isn't about you. It's about freeing myself. So, I forgive you." The words hung in the air, heavy yet liberating. Lydia reached out, as if to touch Emma's hand, but Emma pulled back slightly, unsure of her emotions. After a long pause, she stood. "Goodbye, Lydia," Emma said, her voice steady. As she walked away, Emma felt a strange sense of peace. For the first time, the chains of her past no longer felt like a burden, turning pain into purpose. With the chapter of Lydia fully closed, Emma threw herself into her work with renewed passion. She launched the Voices Unheard Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to providing music therapy and mentorship programs for children in foster care. The foundation's first headquarters was built in Maplewood, a testament to the place where Emma's journey had begun. The grand opening was a community event, drawing friends, family, and supporters from near and far. As Emma cut the ribbon, she felt a swell of gratitude for everyone who had stood by her side. Mrs. Jensen, Mr. Carter, Katie, and countless others had been her lifelines, and she was determined to pay that forward. Love and belonging. As Emma focused on her work, her personal life also began to bloom. She met Lucas, a kind-hearted journalist who had attended one of her speeches. Their connection was instant, rooted in a shared belief in the power of storytelling. Lucas admired Emma's strength, while Emma found comfort in his unwavering support. Their relationship grew steadily, and one evening, under a canopy of stars, Lucas proposed. "Emma," he said, "you've shown me what it means to be brave. I want to spend the rest of my life supporting you, just as you've supported so many others." Emma said yes, her heart full. Their wedding, held in the garden of Mrs. Jensen's home, was a celebration of love, resilience, and new beginnings, a legacy of light. Years later, Emma stood on the stage of a packed auditorium, delivering the keynote speech at a national foster care summit. She spoke of her journey, the people who had lifted her up, and the lessons she had learned. "My life didn't begin in the easiest way," she told the crowd. "But I've learned that our past doesn't define us. It shapes us. We have the power to rewrite our stories, to turn pain into purpose, and to be the light for others who are still searching for their way." The audience erupted into applause, but Emma's thoughts drifted to a young girl sitting in the front row. The girl's eyes sparkled with hope, a reflection of Emma's younger self. As Emma stepped off the stage, the girl approached her. "I want to be like you one day," she said shyly. Emma knelt down, her voice gentle. "You already have everything you need inside you. Just keep believing in yourself." Emma's life became a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. She built a legacy that touched countless lives, her story a reminder that even in the darkest moments, hope and love could prevail. Through her music, advocacy, and relationships, Emma proved that the greatest strength lies in embracing one's truth and using it to light the way for others. And as she stood at the helm of her foundation, surrounded by the people she loved, Emma knew one thing for certain. She was no longer defined by the struggles of her past, but by the incredible journey of who she had become. Part 5 captures Emma's evolution into a woman of impact, love, and purpose, showing that life's challenges can be transformed into a foundation for hope and change. The ripple effect. Honoring the past. Emma decided to honor her father's legacy by establishing the Carter Family Scholarship Fund, which provided financial support to foster youth pursuing careers in the arts. She named the first scholarship recipient Maya, who had begun studying music therapy at a prestigious university. At the fund's launch event, Emma shared her father's letters with the audience. "These words remind me that love can transcend time and distance," she said. "Even if we've lost people along the way, their hopes for us live on in the lives we build." Balancing family and purpose. As Emma's professional life thrived, her personal life continued to blossom. She and Lucas had built a loving home together, welcoming 2 children of their own. Their daughter, Clara, and son, Ethan, grew up immersed in music, activism, and the belief that kindness could change the world. Emma often worried about balancing her demanding career with her family life, but Lucas proved to be an unwavering partner. "Our kids are lucky," he told her one evening as they tucked Clara and Ethan into bed. "They're growing up with a mother who shows them what it means to be strong and compassionate." Emma smiled, grateful for the life they had built. She knew her children would never experience the fear and uncertainty she had endured, and that knowledge filled her with peace. Legacy of hope. As Emma approached her 40s, she was invited to deliver a TED talk titled "Turning Pain into Purpose." The talk recounted her journey, emphasizing the importance of resilience, community, and the transformative power of storytelling. It became one of the most watched talks of the year, sparking a global conversation about foster care reform and mental health. By this time, Voices Unheard had expanded internationally, with programs in Europe, Asia, and Africa. Emma traveled the world, meeting children and families whose lives had been changed by the Foundation's work. Each encounter reminded her of the ripple effect one act of courage could create. A quiet reflection. On the 15th anniversary of the Foundation's creation, Emma returned to the attic of her childhood home in Maplewood. She hadn't been there in years, but Mrs. Jensen, now retired, had invited her back to celebrate. As Emma sifted through old belongings, she came across her stuffed bear, the same one she had clutched in the courtroom all those years ago. She held it close, marveling at how far she had come. That evening, Emma sat on the porch with Lucas, watching the sun dip below the horizon. "Do you think I've done enough?" she asked him softly. Lucas took her hand in his. "Emma, you've done more than enough. But knowing you, there's always more to come." Emma smiled, a quiet determination settling in her heart. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing for certain. She would keep moving forward, lifting others as she climbed. Part 7. A lesson to remember. Years later, as Emma sat in her peaceful garden, she reflected on the remarkable journey that had brought her to this moment. The pain of her past no longer defined her. It had become a source of strength, a foundation for the incredible life she had built. Her story, once filled with secrecy and hurt, had become a testament to the power of truth, resilience, and love. Emma's final reflection. Emma often shared her story with others, not to dwell on the hardships, but to inspire hope. "The truth isn't always easy to face," she would say during her speeches, "but it's the only way to truly heal and grow. Sometimes we have to walk through the fire to find the light on the other side." Her journey taught her that courage doesn't mean living without fear, it means standing up despite it. By finding her voice, Emma had not only freed herself, but had also created a ripple effect of empowerment that touched the lives of thousands. A life filled with purpose. The Voices Unheard Foundation continued to thrive, with Emma mentoring the next generation of leaders, artists, and changemakers. She found joy in watching others rise above their challenges, knowing that her own struggles had paved the way for this impact. Emma's family became her anchor. With Lucas and their 2 children by her side, she lived a life rooted in love and connection. They often spent evenings around the fireplace, sharing stories, laughing and singing together. For Emma, these moments were the true measure of success. A message of hope. Emma's story offers a simple yet profound lesson. Your past does not define you, but how you choose to rise from it does. In the face of adversity, there is always hope, and even the smallest acts of kindness or courage can spark monumental change. The legacy lives on. As Emma's life came full circle, her name became synonymous with resilience, advocacy, and the power of storytelling. But more than anything, she hoped her story would remind people of the incredible strength that lies within them. In her final words at a global conference, Emma left her audience with this message. Life isn't about the challenges we face. It's about the choices we make in response to them. Choose truth, choose hope, and above all, choose love. When you do, you'll find that even in the darkest moments, you have the power to create light, not just for yourself, but for the world around you. With that, Emma smiled, knowing her story had reached its final chapter. It wasn't an ending, but a beginning for those she had inspired. A reminder that no matter how broken the pieces may seem, it's always possible to rebuild a beautiful life. This conclusion ties together Emma's journey, leaving readers or viewers with a powerful lesson on resilience, hope, and the transformative power of truth. This concludes the story. Thank you for watching until the end. I hope you found it enjoyable. If you did, please consider liking the video and sharing it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and activate the notification bell for more captivating stories. Have a great day.